Okay, we're live, and I just got to get the recording going. And there we go. Okay. Okay, folks, thank you for stepping into Cafe Americana on this August 3rd, 2025. Uh, our, uh, um, I'm Professor Kenny, and also have ML Shaw, who's my co-host, and filling in for Andres Dobriansky today is our good friend Chris Simmons. He's our other co-host today. And so we have many topics to talk about. So we're going to talk about the economy. We're also going to talk about Russia, Ukraine. We're going to get into Trump's firing of the Bureau of Labor Statistics individual. And we're going to bring Haley Voda in to talk about Israel and Gaza. So I'll kick it off with the economy. So, having the experience of going cross country for the last couple weeks, last like basically 3 weeks, my experience is that tourism is down, which is hurting our economy, especially Canadians not coming into the country. As you travel west, gas price, because I've gone all the way from east to west and back, gas prices increase by not from $1 to $1.50. Like you go from Minnesota to California, there's $1.50 difference in gas. Okay, so that's a problem. Um, Prices for meals are, when you're eating out, it's expensive. Now, as far as grocery store prices, um, they're definitely better. Not, I'm not going to say they're better than when they were under Biden. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just saying better than, obviously better than, going out to eat all the time. So you're better off, buying your own meal, buying your own food and making it. I don't see consumers spending down. What we're seeing in the economy now, and this is like a 72-hour cycle after this jobs report came out, that lowered the job estimates that were previously brought out. Um, what we're seeing now is this whirlwind of Trump having it's his economy now. We got to face the facts. People on the right have to face the facts that, hey, you're the president, it's your economy. You're still keeping with these tariffs. What I'm reading is there's still a lot of uncertainty out there in the business world. Small businesses who invested because they were worried about tariffs. So before the tariffs hit, they bought in bulk what they needed. Like there's a good example, I think, in either Washington Post or New York Times about a school in Connecticut, a violin school, who depends on the foreign students to come in because they play the violin. I mean, it's a very small kind of example, but I thought it was accurately worded in the terms of, this guy's business depends on these foreign students. Now, with the foreign visas being questionable and not, foreign students aren't coming in like they were. So he's losing that business. And he had already invested in buying violins and strings and stuff because he was worried about tariffs. So he bought all of this stuff in advance. So now he's cash poor. So he had to lay off a couple of people that he had working for him because him and his wife now are just going to have to do the teaching because they can't afford to keep these people on because they're not having enough students come in. That's an example. Now you could apply that to anything. You say, well, then we have this, manufacturing warehouse and all of this stuff. Okay, with employees that we have to pay and we can't afford to pay them, whatever. So the way I look at it, me personally, the way I look at it, I'm still about trade agreements and readjusting the trade agreements. I just don't know if Trump and his economy, his followers are going to be able to stick with him as the economy stays volatile. I still don't see the consumer spending going down. Consumers, we're gluttons here in America, and I brought this up in the past. We spend. We don't mind spending. We don't care. Like if we say I'm screw it, I'm going on vacation like I did. I'm going on vacation and what it's going to cost me be damned. I don't care. I'm going to go out west and enjoy my vacation, which I 100% did. But it cost me, over 10 grand. And as I brought up previously, how many people can spend 10 grand every summer to go away? Even,
Many,
for 2 or 3 weeks, you can't.
not
It's too,
many.
it's too expensive. So I don't think consumer prices are ever going to go down because they never go down. What we need to go down is gas prices. We need interest rates on credit cards to go down. That'll help the economy. But it's Trump's economy now, and he's going to have to sell it. And remember what James Carville said way back in the Clinton days: it's the economy, stupid. And that's what hurt Biden. Never mind Biden's, whatever Biden's problems were, with the mental acuity. I don't want to get into that. I have a more problem with the disloyalty of the Democrats when it comes to that than I do with his mental acuity. But the problem is he got stuck with the inflation problem because of his increase in the debt as 4.7 trillion during his 4 years. Um, but that sank his presidency, because inflation was up and that it's about the economy. People were hurting, prices, at the grocery store were too high, and people latched on to that. It wasn't the only thing that hurt him, but that was a big problem. And now Trump's got this problem. And he can't say, well, it's the Biden economy. It's always nice to say that in the first couple months you're president. Oh, I got to fix the Biden economy. Biden did that. Well, too late, Trump. You're in August now. It's your economy. So what are you going to do for the American people? So, having said that, I'm going to transition to Chris a little bit. We'll talk about the Bureau of Labor Statistics individual who got canned for the jobs report. And Chris, give us the bigger picture on that, because Chris has a very good take on this. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Kenny. Good morning to everyone. Uh, this move may not be as visible and real to the average person as the prices in the grocery store, et cetera. But I think it may have longer term implications than short term tariff policy can be changed on a monthly basis. In fact, we see it being changed on a monthly basis. But there's some things that when you introduce them into the atmosphere, it's really hard to get them out. And I think one of them is a further weakening of people's trust in what the government says. Now, I was a banker earlier in my career, and I did huge loans, companies buying up companies around the world, acquisitions, refinances, et cetera. And when we're looking at making financial projections, we're looking at data like that jobs data, and other data that entities like the Bureau of Labor Statistics put out. If some of you guys can remember the scene in the movie Trading Places, where they're trying to gain knowledge about the orange report, the orange prices or whatever, that kind of information is very closely kept and very much relied on to be true. When you have your president essentially suggesting by his action that he is going to put a sycophant in that job to produce the numbers that he wants, it may not be what his plan is, but it's definitely the implication of it. Who can have faith in those numbers or any other numbers that come out of there? Next, we'll be wondering if the inflation numbers are accurate.
Right.
And so, we wonder why we're polarized. Well, one of the main reasons we're polarized is because we don't believe the same stuff anymore. And I think it's going to be one of those genies we can't put back in the bottle, that now we're wondering, gee, was this politically motivated? Was that politically motivated? That woman that he fired was confirmed like 88 votes or something in the Senate. She came from the super liberal academic bastion of Virginia Tech, which I can tell you, I've spoken at Virginia Tech. It is not a liberal hotbed, okay? It's not Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. It's a great school. My old firm used to recruit heavily from there. So there's nothing in her background. It'd be different if he had some evidence that she, was a political hack or something. This woman's a 20-year government nerd. Um, but I think the final thing I'll say about it is that I hope that his supporters will realize that this is yet another case of when what I'm doing isn't working, I give you something else to think about that's not based in fact. And maybe that'll help them maybe be a little bit quicker about seeing the next head fake that's coming down the road. But, I've been looking at that data like it was gospel for 40 years since I got out of business school. And never once did anybody think somebody was cooking it. And then the last point I'll make is people may not be aware of this, but a bunch of former commissioners got together and issued a statement saying that they purposefully decentralized the production of that report inside the organization. And it's very difficult for anybody to game it. That the only thing the commissioner does is announce it and interpret the numbers, but the numbers are the numbers. So here's the irony. He in fact, no matter who he puts in there, may not be able to distort the numbers, but he's distorted the way people trust it. So we may have the worst of both worlds, where nothing's really changed, but everybody has to wonder whether it did or not.
That's a great point, Chris, because a lot of this problem with tariffs and in addition to firing the Bureau of Labor Statistics person is the total distrust now of numbers and what's going on. Mike,
Yeah, I think what it shows to a couple things. Chris made great points. I was going to say is that you have the Fed on the one hand and the economy, and how there is this bias, if you perceive it as Trump, just if you kind of put his worldview on for a moment, this bias against Trump and his move, the way he wants to go forward, because he wants a three basis point cut. Real hard, he's really hard on that. Nobody doubts where he's at on that. But this, I think, also is the way of Trump, the Tao of Trump, in a way, because instead of defending weak job numbers, he can point to it and see, like, look at this, look at this. This is I am attacking statistical incompetence, yada yada yada, whatever you want to attach to that messaging. Whether it's good or bad in the long run, I don't. I don't know. I don't think it's going to undermine anything else. That there's obviously this set of Trump versus the state, or the institutions that we rely on. And when this is where the Democrats make their money at, or they have currency in the realm of attention, and see, he's attacking. When he does this, he attacks the democracy itself, essentially. So it kind of makes that argument a little bit stronger. But at the same time, Trump has always been unconventional. Sometimes it's a distraction, sometimes it's not. He's only got a few more of these, like kind of like this, that he can do realistically, to like where it really is about that. So he can kind of just point off to the side and say, I don't have to defend bad job numbers, because that's not my fault. This is just this person here. And you're right, Chris. It was 86 to 8. And matter of fact, to tack onto that, JD Vance was a senator from Ohio.
Mm.
He also voted for her,
right?
Tarfer.
Yeah, watch your language.
Sorry, her name Erica, I believe, is her first name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I just want to be
So
respectful.
I got a question for both of you guys because I'm not totally clear. Do we know why these numbers were changed? Is it because of the layoffs in the federal government and they had to readjust the numbers? Because I don't believe the layoffs in the federal government are so large that you would adjust the numbers to this way. I don't know the answer.
Well, I have a couple
Well,
thoughts.
the only thing I'll say is that if you look back historically, these readjustments are common. It's a complex process,
Yep.
and there's just a lot of variables in it. And you can go back 10 years, 8 years, 6 years, 5 years. Adjustments are not a rare thing.
Hmm.
He's just making a big deal out of the fact that they changed under him.
Yeah.
For the negative, we wouldn't be hearing a peep if they had gone in the other direction.
Right, but I'm just saying there's still got to be a reason for the change, and usually there's got if you're saying, well, we hired 300,000 and
Yeah,
that's the job growth, but we forgot to include that we fired 100,000, so it's really 200.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Simple
yeah,
math.
yeah. I don't know what the underlying
Yeah.
drivers were this time, and generally, um, you would hear that, and they may
Yes.
have even said it. It's just that his action drowned out any other thing
Exactly.
that
A
came
hundred
along with
percent.
it.
100%. All right, so I'm going to transition a little bit.
I was
It's.
gonna,
Go
I
ahead,
was,
Mike. Go ahead,
yeah, I
Mike.
was gonna say real quick to add on to what Chris was saying. Like you have those two things that are at play as well. You have the unemployment numbers, which have a whole bunch of we keep changing the way we count unemployment as it goes there. But the other side of that coin too is the native born workers have been strong each quarter. I've got to go back and check the revisions or whatever, but that bodes well. That's kind of a plus sign.
Yeah.
But to go back, and Aaron will be able to tack onto this wonderfully as far as like these are the all the economic things that I can remember that Aaron has shared about the overall trends in the
Hmm.
markets relating to tariffs, and this kind of backfill into each other of those of like what the numbers really mean, and the really the numbers out there are a little bit more precarious and potentially scary. I'm not being a doomsayer here, but they're not as optimistic as they could be, like or where we want them to be as far as the overall economic health, and the viewer can draw their own conclusions from there.
Yeah, Steve just put in the chat, which he's 100% right. He said, didn't the initial numbers under Biden routinely be higher than the adjusted ones? Yes, that is true. Okay, so I'm gonna and by the way, to those of you with your hands up, and Aaron, we're definitely gonna bring you in for this, but we're gonna do our thing first, and then once we're done, we'll go to the raised hand. So just be patient. So one thing kind of ticky tacking onto this is in terms of misinformation and being disingenuous and not being able to. I talked to Chris and Mike about this in our pre-show. To be a fair broker for the American people is good old Chuck Schumer, going out on the podium and yelling and screaming about how Doge cuts are paying for a $200 million ballroom, which is not true. It's private donations and Trump himself doing it. But Chris has a great spin on this, and I want him to bring in. I want Chris to talk about his perspective of it because I thought it was great. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the way Schumer chose to try to attack Trump about the $200 million ballroom is yet another example of why I want Schumer to go home. And I want some smarter people in his place, because the better statement he could have made is that, okay, fine, you tell us the donors are going to pay for it. Well, of course the donors can afford it, because you just gave them a huge tax break, which is going to increase the deficit instead of, and at the same time, you're putting in tariffs and you're touting how much revenue is going to be raised from that. But tariffs are paid by average people at the grocery store and at Walmart. But you just gave these rich guys some extra money to help pay for your fancy ballroom. So yeah, good. Kudos for that. And then secondly, we got to wonder, well, these rich donors, what are they going to get in exchange in terms of favors for giving you money for your fancy ballroom? Oh, I know. Maybe they can keep their names from being publicized on the Epstein files. So I would make a three pearl necklace and strangle Trump with the three pearl necklace rather than that weak argument that Schumer came up with.
Yeah.
And Hakeem needs to come up with better arguments too while I'm on it, because that little hand thing is getting
Yeah.
old. It's getting old.
Yeah. I just find, and we've talked about this, guys, but I just find it fascinating that, Trump is really like in that stumbling mode right now, and he always seems to, he's like Teflon. He seems to bounce back from it pretty quickly. And the Democrats just cannot capitalize on this. And I just find it fascinating, that, usually you would see a stumble like this, the other side would just grab onto it and be out front with somebody and really make a move on it, and you'd be like, wow, these guys are really stepping up their game, and I'm not seeing it yet. And I'm just fascinated by that because, I just think our whole political system is so screwed right now, and that we're not getting, we need a champion, whether it's on the left or the right, and I don't see many. It's really a problem, Mike.
Well, we all know Trump loves to build. That's his brand. And you
Yeah.
see again that no matter what the Democrats say, and I do agree that they can't. This isn't the only one that they haven't been able to capitalize on and kind of refactor the discussion and focus on something else, and have something there. But it is his situational confidence. I'll put that way. Like whether he always finds a way to find situational confidence or a distraction or whatever there. But I don't know. It's just kind of a curious thing to attack him on, with so many other things there. But it's just going to add into, okay, okay, so what? He made the White House a little bit more Waldorf Astoria. Okay.
No, I mean, I disagree. I think at the same moment that you are playing games to hide from people that you're taking away their Medicaid because you're slipping it to be coming into place after the midterms, I think it's a perfect combination of facts if you know how to state it.
Sure.
That you're kicking poor people off health care, but you need a fancier ballroom at the White House for
No,
God's sake.
that you're 100% right, and this kind of goes back to an indictment on the GOP from my perspective, which would be they should be able to say, look, we'll handle tough things. We're the party that handles tough things. Trump is handling all these tough things, and on top of that, we actually are tackling welfare reform, that kind of thing, and try to make it into it. But they're not. So there is you're right. You're right. If they could take advantage of it. Now, I think an AOC type absolutely could, at this stage of the game. But that may be Ma'am Danny, but he's got his own hands full off to the side.
Yeah. All right, we're going to transition to Ukraine and Russia. Um, this weekend, the bombings don't stop, the drone attacks don't stop. But I read that Ukraine attacked some oil refineries in Russia with their drone attacks, and then Russia came back hard at them. So, without the benefit of having our Ukrainian Russian expert Andres on, I'm gonna pass the baton to Mike to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, there's been quite a few things going on, not only on the front line, but Ukraine is has been very successful in attacking more of Russia's refineries and their ability to make and do the things that they want to do. And you also have the just wave after wave of strikes, counter strikes from Russia into Ukraine. Again, the whole point of their when they deploy their drones and they attack. They're going for attribution. They're trying to attribute, down the forces. They're also doing. That's why they target the civilian side and whatnot. And you also had this very interesting exchange on the side here too, where this Ukraine Russia kind of is going to be coming more into the focus in the next few weeks, I think, because you had that give and take with Trump and Medvedev over in Russia, and them arguing about Medvedev made a point of like, hey, listen, man, we got this thing called a dead hand, which is essentially like if you decapitate the Russian state leadership side, we're going to automatically launch our nukes. So don't think about it. And then in response to that, Rubio pointed out that Medvedev wasn't really in true power, and wasn't in play anymore, and Putin was still the main guy. But in response to that, Trump is starting to tie, just like he did in his first term, he's starting to tie his actions with words, direct words, where he said that he deployed two nuclear submarines out in regions, because obviously you don't want to tell where they're at, but essentially like saying, I think Trump is making the broader point of like, you should have took the off ramp that I offered a long time ago, which was much more favorable to you. You're not going to do that. Fine. Let's keep playing these games and see where this goes. But it is developing, and nothing truly has changed between, aside from like Russia keeps ramping up its actual operations on the battlefield in response to these back and forths that we have with them, and they're only getting worse. So they're only going to see to piss off Trump more, hopefully, and then to do something other than that. But that's what I wanted to report on.
Yeah, and Trump has this idea of secondary tariffs in play
Right.
for um my mom's calling. Hey mom, I will call you back. I'm on a show. I'll be right back. So anyway, my mom's 84 and she's struggling. Um So that's why I'm a good son and I stay on my show instead of taking care of my mom. No, she's fine. Um, so anyway, these secondary tariff things, ideas from Trump is like, India, if you continue to buy oil from Russia, I'm gonna hurt you. And the funny thing was, I talked about this on Mark's show way back when. India, in like February, in the Indian president, prime minister, or whatever they call him, right? Whatever the head of India is I have no idea anymore. President or prime minister was in the Oval Office. Yes, we're gonna buy our oil from America, and I said, yeah, but it never happens, and here we are. Right? Yeah, I'll let you come in a sec, Chris. And here we are, with the secondary tariffs. India just announced we're still going to buy our oil from Russia. And that's been our biggest problem with this Ukraine-Russia war is Russia is all about oil. You stop their oil production or you stop their selling of oil, and that destroys their economy, and then it's a whole different ball game. And nobody's been able to to marshal that strategy together. Go ahead, Chris. Are you muted, Chris? Do I have to unmute you? No, you're good, Chris.
But I didn't have my hand raised.
Oh, I just wanted to see if you wanted to comment about what I was just saying about that. I thought you were saying something. Okay, so I'm going to bring Haley in now to talk about Israel and Gaza, and then after Haley, and she's going to mention the picnic again, and then we'll go to Aaron first with his hand raised to kind of enlighten us on all of those topics because I know I was with Aaron yesterday actually, and we actually talked about a bunch of this stuff. And an interesting thing, Aaron, I want you to bring up is the Medvedev thing as like Trump going after him as a surrogate so he doesn't have to go directly after Putin. So, Haley, come on in and let's talk about what's going on with Israel and Gaza.
So regarding like the facts on the ground, unfortunately nothing has changed for the better. Aid is still not, reaching where it's supposed to be reaching, and there are still reports of shootings and things like that. Again, nobody knows really where it's coming from. They say the IDF says Hamas, so it's really kind of the same. However, Hamas did release videos of two hostages in the last 3 days. This one is, first of all, for everybody who is looking right now, this is one of the hardest things to watch. It is like viewer discretion is so advised. But this is snippets from the Hamas released video of Aviatar David, one of the remaining 20 hostages. And that is Aviatar David, and that's him after 666 days in captivity. And for anybody who is not Jewish, but remembers what the Holocaust images look like, this is it's not probably, it is exactly the same. So this is very, very, like, this is all the news. This is the only thing that anybody's talking about in Israel right now. And there was a protest of about 60,000 Israelis in Tel Aviv yesterday, after this was released, for the end of the war and the release of all the hostages. So it's just truly, truly depraved. And I really don't have any words after that. I cried like a freaking baby yesterday. But yeah, so that's where we're at. And while I understand the need for aid in Gaza and the hunger I do want to mention that that is what true starvation looks like. And there is a difference between a hunger crisis and what the hostages are going through. And they're being starved and tortured. And his family believes that he has days to live. So that's where we're at today.
Okay. Um, so I was just thinking kind of like the irony of we're not the aid going into Gaza is a problem, right? The food aid. And then obviously and we see a lot of Palestinians starving. There's a starvation crisis in Palestine. Well, obviously,
Correct you. There's
yeah.
a hunger crisis,
Hunger
which
crisis. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
could be imminent starvation if it doesn't get fixed. So
Right.
there is a difference.
But that would also translate to these hostages not getting any food,
But
right?
they're not getting any food for 660 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're surviving on no
Yeah.
food. I mean, there are pictures of hostages, what they have to eat, which is a pizza a day. And then there are pictures of them sitting next to Hamas leadership with cans and
Right.
mounds of food while they're sitting there eating. So while yes, no, I'm not denying the trauma and the horror that is going on in Gaza, the hostages have been dealing with this for 666 days. So
Okay.
there is a difference.
Okay. Chris, you never you don't well, you're a host, brother. You don't have to raise your hand. You just jump right in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I watched along with my girlfriend for about the sixth time in my case, Schindler's List last night, one of my favorite movies, and I came away thinking, you know, the world really needs to always make sure that the Jewish people are not singled out again, and certainly not in the way they were before. Uh, but I also feel very strongly that proportionality matters. And when you ravage millions due to what's happening to a much smaller set of people, I think you are lining yourself up to lose support. And I don't think the Jewish people are losing support, but the Israeli government and what they're doing to millions, not hundreds, they're going to lose support.
They already are.
They needed to show more restraint in how they went about dealing with Hamas. They didn't, and the longer they do it, the more trouble they're going to get. Especially, I mean, I can tell you, I'm pretty sure if Kamala were in the White House, Bibi wouldn't be running amok like he's running, for example, because she made it clear during the election that she supported defending Israel, but she also supported fair treatment of the people that were on the other side of the border too. So I just think I don't think it's going to end well for the state of Israel the way they're handling it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Heavy.
I'm just saying I have no disagreements with anything he said. However, Israel has done itself such a disservice with its because it doesn't take the international PR war as a front. It doesn't take it as seriously as, let's say, the actual war on the ground they've been fighting. And they've never understood how important it is to have a State Department that not only is dealing with the the foreign countries and diplomatic issues, but also dealing with the explanations of everything that is the state of Israel is doing. And I mean, I keep saying this, but Bibi doesn't even have an English speaking representative, a correspondent to explain his decisions around the world. And regardless of how I feel about Bibi, this is a government, like a decades long issue that has plagued Israel since the start of the nation. So the fact that they don't take the international PR war seriously on any level is doing such damage, like I say, to the Israelis who live abroad, who don't live in the state of Israel, and there's about 1 million, I think, who don't live in Israel, and the Jewish diaspora, because people are not differentiating between Jews and Israel. And so it's making one of the most Barak Ravid, who's one of the best Israeli journalists, is saying that Israel has not been in such a diplomatic crisis since 1948, which is horrifying to see. So it's this PR war. They're losing, and they're going to lose, and it's a travesty because the other side is actually spewing out lies, but we have nothing to counter it with.
Yeah, it's a definitely a very tough PR situation. What I would just push back a little bit on you, Chris, with Kamala being in office and BB ran roughshod over Obama, so I think he'd just run roughshod over Kamala. So you know, BB's more empowered now because he's friends with Trump. So and Trump's very loyal to him. All right, so I'm going to bring in Aaron. Aaron's going to touch on a bunch of the points we went over today. I hope you wrote a list, Aaron, and come on in and set us straight on the job numbers and set us straight on
Yeah,
Medvedev and all of that stuff.
that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So what I was gonna lead with was the Labor Department,
Yeah.
because I think that's something people don't kind of understand, and of course, when any executive changes any of the data collection that we have, um, I think it's incumbent on them to explain it. Now, I don't mean them, meaning the president specifically, but I mean that's they're surrogates. So, quick background on how BLS works. At a very simple level, there's three big surveys that they do. They do a business survey, they do a household survey, and they do a government survey. And these surveys are massive. So the business survey, they send out basically surveys to the top 175,000 businesses in the United States that employ about 50 million, 70 million people in that range. They get back on average about 120,000 of those surveys. Most businesses want to. Yeah, I'd say most businesses want to participate that are in the survey. And then there's a household surveys, and those are sent out to millions of households around the United States. Every one of the 3,150 counties, even within the counties, urban, dense urban, urban, suburban, exurban, rural. I mean, so it's all. I think it's seven. There's seven categories. So the surveys touch everywhere, and then the government surveys are state or local, state, and federal. So it's the most exhaustive data collection in the world. I mean, there's nothing even remotely close to it.
So then, Aaron,
And
what is the
yeah,
let's get right to the point. What is
yeah,
the reason why those numbers
sure.
went down?
Okay, so I'll get to that in a quick second. So when I was when I was out of active duty in the Army and went to the National Guard, I went to grad school for economics, or I started to go to grad school for economics until I realized I didn't actually want what the job was going to be after about a year or so. But as part of that, basically, economics students are like the serfs that are used to go, especially graduate students, to go through and help validate those data sets, and to help to basically normalize or smooth the methodology that's already been published for the statistical collection. So back in the day, this is 30 years ago, this was a very sort of manual Excel spreadsheet type activity. Now it's completely computerized. There's still that quality validation level that grad student, grad econ serfs are still used for, but it's a little higher up in the food chain. So the reason, and this is the key, that you get changes in the surveys or the changes in the results is the survey composition responses change, right? So the same, I told you 175,000 businesses are sent these non-farm. Farm and ag is different. That's done through the Department of Agriculture. That's a political kind of thing tied to the Farm Bill. That's a whole different conversation, let's just say. But all the non-farm businesses, is that those same 120,000 or so businesses aren't the same ones responding all the time. So you'll see changes. Now, the other thing that happens is the responses are coming in at different times. Meaning, so let's say, you had your business, Jimmy, that's, whatever, an electronics repair business, that's industrial electronics, and you say, hey, I want to participate in this. But what happens is the people who are managing it, they take PTO, or there's a busy month, so you get your survey in late. And so you have a combination of the same respondents don't respond. That's why it's a broad survey, right? Statistically significant. 175,000 businesses is the most statistically significant survey in the world. And then you have a different timetable that people respond, or the businesses respond with those survey responses. And that's across different industries. So you'll see, as Chris was saying earlier, the adjustments, they're called, right? And these adjustments, if you look at, there's a separate Fred report and BLS report on adjustments. And really, I kind of blame the media a little bit on this, even the financial media, and that they don't hype up the adjustment surveys as the same as as a headline. And I understand why. Headline news is political, and things are up, things are down, blah, blah, blah. And people don't want to look at the details. But the adjustment surveys are actually more valuable, because the adjustment surveys, and this is kind of a key thing to understand, nobody who makes any decisions uses the monthly surveys. They use a minimum of 3, and usually 3, 4, 6 month smoothing out of those surveys to make some decisions, because that'll give you a trend. Monthly doesn't give you any trend, right? You can have, weather effects, obviously, if you have a horrible winter or a unique summer, etc.
It's quarterly, essentially, is the thing, Aaron.
Well, yeah, and so what you'll see, and you saw I'm sure some of the like good people nerds trying to do this, because if you noticed, they were there was, in all these stories, there was an attempt to put the 3-month rolling average, which is what it's called, of the non-farm, non-government, non-healthcare hiring, which is basically negative 46,000, because that's kind of where we are, right? Nobody wants to really kind of go there, but that's the real number. And that number tracks because we've had all these sort of economic changes going on, and in the last 6-8 months, and that's generally going to freeze non-farm, non-healthcare, non-government service payroll, right? That's not unique. By the way, that happened in 21 when coming out of COVID, we had all the chaos of that anyways, and then we got the massive IRA and additional stimuluses, and we still had low rates, and there was a lot of chaos. I would argue similar chaos, different policy interventions, but same chaos. And you basically had very flat hiring until you get some stability, right? Till you get policy stability. This isn't rocket science, right? If you're a business, you need to have a stable, predictable, and predictable is measured at a minimum 3, and it's usually 6 months forward of smooth operating environment. And I find it weird that we've had 2 sets of very old administrations who are basically believing they know more than, millions of businesses out there and what they need. And it seems like we're just going to bounce back and forth with that kind of policy
Right.
regime.
Right.
So,
So Aaron,
so anyways, that's
so
that. Hopefully that helps. That helps
right,
give you some sense of this.
the hiring was mostly what in the medical or hospital
Yeah,
or
yeah. So exactly.
right,
So what happens with healthcare hiring? So
right.
healthcare hiring is pretty straightforward every year. So you
Well,
have to look at it is that there's two drivers to hiring cycles. There's either a government payment side of hiring, or there is a graduation business cycle side of hiring. That's the only two ways piles of people are hired. I meaning a whole bunch of people graduate from school, undergraduate or graduate schools, get hired, or they don't get hired, and lateral professionals get hired, which is really what's happening right now. So a bunch of younger people are struggling getting hired right now, primarily um, because it's highly unpredictable right now. If I've got a choice to choose between a young graduate who doesn't know anything and I've got to spend the next 3 years training, and worse, if things get stable and things take off, they're going to leave anyways, or I hire a very predictable adult lateral, maybe even older, and probably not have to pay as much as I normally would because they want the job. And so those are the people actually getting hired right now. So if you're in the over 40 category, and you're willing to hustle and be mobile, it's a phenomenal job market right now. If you're under 30, and you're a new graduate, it's not. And so that's the graduation hiring that happens between laterals and graduates, and then there's government payments. So the health industry, or healthcare, I should say, is completely dependent, not 100% of its payments, but its architecture is on the government payment cycle. That process kicks back in. It's a government fiscal year cycle that has a lag of 3 months. And it's just because of how budgeting works in big healthcare organizations. So the government sets its budget, passes it in September, October. It's the end of the year. And then by January, February, basically the payments, the net 60, net 90 payments start kicking in of the net new formulas, calculations, and then healthcare hires right off of that. That's where they hire, and that bleeds into the graduations. For hiring doctors, nurses, et cetera. So that's how. So you'll always get a wave of healthcare hiring always in the first half of the year. Also, because when people graduate medical programs, the reality is the last year in most of these programs, they're already working, or they're in non-contract working for where usually they're going to be hired for anyways, right? That's their intern year, residency year, even nurses, et cetera. So what happens is that turns into a legal contract, usually within 6 months. Most healthcare programs, people graduate in May, June, et cetera. So
All right,
they're
but
getting
listen,
that
listen.
contract. So
I
that's
want to.
how that works. Does
Right.
that make sense? Or
Yes, it makes
I put you
perfect
to
sense.
sleep? I put you
No,
guys
no,
to
no. But
sleep.
listen, I just want the simplest answer. Simplest
Yeah.
answer. Hirings are up where? Hirings are down where?
Yeah. So in
One
the
sentence.
regular economy, which is non-farm, non-healthcare, non-government payments, hirings are down.
Down,
They're not
right?
they're not implosively down, but
Hmm.
they're between flat and down marginally. Now remember, there's 175 million people working. And so when they're down 50,000, it's down, but it's not implosive. It's not like imploding down millions, right? And then where they're up is government hiring. What's unique right now that we're not seeing, and this is sort of going to be a test here, is with a large amount of deportations or an attempt on that, and obviously people not going to work, you're not seeing massive hiring in those trades.
Hmm.
That's unique, right? Because in prior histories of this, going all the way back, Operation Wetback in the 50s, we've gone through these cycles a few times. You did see non-farm and farm-based payrolls go up, at least in the lower trades. You're not seeing that at all. Now, I do think some of that comes down to the whole our whole housing market is seized up right now, and it's not. And the Fed cutting rates isn't going to change that. That people don't understand like what the drivers of that are. But that's a real problem, because if you guys drive around, you don't see enormous housing construction going on, which doesn't make a lot of sense actually. And so that's a real issue. To be honest, I think that's a big miss by both parties the last 5 years, like foundational miss, and they just seem to be continuing it. And they and they it seems like we have a fairly incompetent class of leaders who just can't get their sleeves rolled up and just understand the drivers. I mean, this isn't rocket science. People
Yeah.
know why housing isn't being built, and they're just unwilling to prioritize this because it's not sexy, right? Like, to fix housing is the least politically sexy thing you're ever going to do. It is so bureaucratically boring. And I just think in this new world, this natural born killers media world, no one wants that politics.
Yeah.
And so to me, and by the way, that to me is a real test case here, because if you deport a lot of people, but you don't see construction hiring, there ain't no houses getting built, right? That's just, it's like, there's no robots building houses. And so, and then, by the way, if there's no houses getting built, then the whole supply chain behind that, which, housing construction supply chain is very thick because it's very material dependent and dense. And so it's just a huge supply chain. So when you move from 500,000 and by the way, this is a last point I'll make, and it's something that didn't get a lot of pub in the last few weeks, but new housing starts are lower than we've ever calculated. And this is going back to the 80s. And understand what that means, because our economy was that much smaller then, and we had that many less people and that fewer amount of homes and homes being constructed. So this is a nominal figure. So we're building at a level. So what's really dangerous right now that nobody's talking about is that places like California, and let's say New York and Illinois and all the sort of big blue states that struggle at building houses or create their own struggles, that is now turning into a virus. And so and that's happening even in Texas, outside of Houston. Houston's doing a great job, but even they're getting a little funky. People are getting ticked off by how much is getting built. So what's going on is we run a risk in another 2-3 years of this, that we just have a basically static net new housing a construction market. And if that's the case, man, that is as large of an event. I would say that's as large of an economic event as the GFC.
Well,
It really is.
the housing market is a disaster right now, and that's why you're not going to get the building of new houses. They can't sell the old ones. It's just ridiculous right now. But I'm gonna move on. I'm also gonna encourage other people. I see a lot of chit chat going on in the chat, but nobody raising their hands. It'd be great if you raise your hand so we could discuss those issues and we could go past the time. So if anybody wants to jump in on talking about the economy, what they think about it, how they feel about it, how's it affecting them, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. I want Aaron to uh, address the Putin Medvedev
Yes.
Trump cycle and do
So
that,
I
Aaron.
yeah, I'll do that
Short,
quickly. Don't
short,
worry.
short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jimmy and I had an interesting conversation last night about this, which was, um, I had an idea. I can't prove this, of course, but that Trump does not want to attack Putin directly, right? He just doesn't want to do that. So basically, Dmitry Medvedev makes it easy because he seems to be, and I use this lightly, but it seems to be pretty accurate. He seems to be kind of an old school, end of career Boris Yeltsin political drunk, where he just goes out and just says crazy stuff on a regular basis. And I don't mean just normal crazy stuff. I mean, let's throw nukes around, and we'll vaporize your city and this and that. And I think Trump is responding to him very much in that kind of Cold War tactics, where you don't Everyone is playing, chess, where you don't respond directly to what was said. You respond indirectly to what someone else said, and you're sending messages. So I think we're putting two boomers to, two ballistic missile subs, or we're removing them, which is what was claimed. My view is that we just put them on different alert status. They're already there. And that was a signal to Putin that we can vertically escalate, right? Because in this whole conflict, we've never vertically escalated, right? The Russians have always been the vertical escalator and just threatening everything. And that Trump was looking, or at least someone on his team was looking for the moment that it would be likely Medvedev would step in it, because he does, and that this is a signal which is not used to actually vertically escalate, but is to drive Putin to at least start taking talks more seriously. And we're going to test this out. Now, the question is this: Trump's definition of serious action and talks is one thing. I mean, and I really do mean this. I don't mean we'll call it domestic Trump. I mean the sort of international one, which I do think are sort of two people now, or two personas. Putin's definition of this is much smaller. Putin is not giving up on the 4 oblasts and taking full control of those. So that takes that off the table. He's not giving up, Crimea. That takes that off the table. So really all that can be off the table is probably large targeting of cities. But I don't think the military wants to do that in Russia, because they view that as their really all that's left for them outside of the sort of slog, the World War I slog they're on the front lines. The only thing they have left is hitting Ukrainian population centers, which is basically what they're doing. And so I don't think there's any off ramp here that Putin and their team would legitimately consider. It just doesn't make any sense. So I think at some point, this is going to force Trump, whether he gives him 30 days, 60, 90, we'll play our way through all those little, that period of time, which probably takes us to the end of the year. He will then be forced a fork in the road to either resupply Ukraine or this whole new model, which probably makes more sense, which is sell Europe the weapons and have Europe, loan them / sell them to the Ukrainians at a discount. And that's probably where we end up next year. And then that allows him to wash his hands and say, look, he's supporting the good fight. He's not in it. Your Europeans are out in front. The Europeans want that role at this point. I mean, especially after the trade deals, the Europeans would rather now start driving the car, maybe finally. So I think that's where all this ends up, and then the fight keeps going, of course.
All right, let me bring Steve in. Go ahead, Steve. Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks. Getting back to the economy, I keep hearing that this disastrous economy, and I'm retired now, so I'm not in the economy other than living off my IRA and stuff. What are the metrics that everybody's looking at that says this is such a disastrous economy? I know the market took a bit of a hit on Friday. But up until then, since the Liberation Day, when the market obviously took a hit, the market has been on new highs. Around here, now I know all housing starts out local. Around here, they're building like crazy. I mean, I don't know how they're able to sustain the amount of building that's going on.
And where are you? Right, tell everybody where you are, Steve.
Southern Utah.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of that is people displaced. People moving from Nevada, California, Arizona, up into a place with a little bit better lifestyle. But I'm just not seeing it. So other than unemployment has gone up a little bit. Inflation, it's gone up a little bit too, but it isn't out of ain't scary inflation like we were having 3 or 4 years ago. So.
I have an answer for you.
Let me know.
I have an answer for you.
Okay.
Just like there aren't really that many people focused on Sydney Sweeney, I don't think there are really that many people who are trying to claim the economy is disastrous. There's some French people who want to allege that. But what I can defend is this couple of statements. Trump promised prices were going down. He
I
said
get
they
that.
would.
I get
He
that. I get
said
that.
he said they
I
would
get that.
drop like a rock.
I get that.
And and
Now,
and, and so
but
see, let me finish,
and there, hold on. I
finish
want to
real
go back.
quick.
I want to go back to the facts and figures.
Yeah,
What in the facts and figures tell us the economy is in such terrible shape?
I just told you that I don't agree in essence that it's in terrible shape.
Okay,
But
good.
the
Good.
promise is not being kept, and what's worse is that the things he said he wants to do will cause it to be worse than it is today.
Well, so far that has not played out.
Well, wait a minute
Now,
now. That first set of tariffs that he announced were at ridiculously high levels. He
yeah.
said that those ridiculously high levels were going to force companies to reshore. Then people said, oh my God, if we can believe him, the economy is going in the crapper. The reason it hasn't gone into the crapper is because he tacoed himself and didn't do it. He went
Okay.
from
One of the things
50%
on
talk,
tariffs.
he went from 50% talk to 15% talk.
Okay.
But the last thing
I've
I'll
made this
say is that
argument with other
even at
people regarding tariffs.
15, inflation is coming, and by December, it will be apparent that the promises about prices dropping will not have been kept. So those of us who can't stand him, and I'm clearly one of them, I don't have to go to the unsupportable extreme of claiming that the economy is in terrible shape. Say he certainly hasn't made it better.
Okay.
I would say though
One
that,
one thing I want to point out:
oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
prices dropping is not a good thing. It's deflationary. Inflation is bad.
Well,
It's
he promised
it Okay. Okay. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying I'm not for actually prices dropping because I've been to
Well, that's what people
Zimbabwe
said they
and
voted for. They said they voted for lower prices.
okay, that's cool. You end up with deflation. That destroys civilizations. Deflation is bad, bad, bad. Much worse than inflation. So now the other thing is I'm going to say I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, tariffs. Uh, Tariffs. These are things, and this is what I said at the very beginning. My wife was very concerned about the tariffs. I said tariffs are artificial. You can turn them on and turn them off. They aren't like a systemic problem in the economy where you have to work through things like that. Tariffs, he can pivot, and that's exactly what he did. Now, I think he's using these inflated numbers on tariffs as a wake up to the adversaries in the economy in the other countries. He's probably, I think that's more of a tactic than anything else. So anyway, I'll leave
Uh,
it at that.
I was going to add too, you also have, this is the first 6 months. It's not, you can't really say one way or another objectively, probably leaning more toward flat to like not going gangbusters like Chris had said that Trump had promised. But you also have, he's not all the way outdone yet. He's, yes, to a certain degree, this fight with the Fed and with Powell is a little bit of a distraction, but it also is something that Trump really does care about and want to get to. You got these things that are you're not going to be he's not going to be able to do anything about that until later on next year, and that's when we'll really know where we stand in the pantheon of like the spectrum of like are we going somewhere or are we going backwards? Like that's one thing. So it's I think the jury's still out, but you also have the deregulation efforts that are going to be kicking off this fall, if they're already being worked on. And rolling that up into the USMCA trade thing, which is on the bubble for 2026. So these tariffs, he has made it very clear to our foreign friends and partners that this business as usual is not going to be the order of the day. This is going to look very different than they're used to. Some of these are a little bit tactics, sure, I think some of them are, I think the underlying push though is more strategic. And I wish I could give a clearer picture. But I do think that Trump isn't afraid to pivot, and we'll see. Like I don't know. I wish the economy was a little bit hotter right now, but it takes time to get there. And companies are just now starting to do stuff more with tech hiring, whether they be AI or outside of that. But we just don't know yet. I agree with Chris from the standpoint of like I don't think the economy is in the tank and the toilet, but we could could very well that we could be very low living in a different world by the time next spring hits, because then you have a full year of Trump running things, and he again this goes back to how many times can you fire the chief nerd or statistician or whatever for whatever government agency or whatever. You can only do that so many times before you can no longer point to Biden or whatever, and then like where it really does become Trump's, objectively speaking, and you can't, you know.
Hey, ML, if since Trump's a builder, I'm going to make a real estate analogy.
Sure.
If a guy promises to build you a beautiful 2-story antebellum mansion, and he builds you a 1-story ranch, and he says, "Well, I still built you a house. What are you complaining about?" That's where we're going to end up on most of what he says.
Well, that's when if you were taking it to the analogy to the nth degree, then Trump would you would sue the hell out of the guy.
Yeah, which is what the midterms are going to be about. I mean, look, there's some things that are mathematically. I challenge anybody on here or anywhere else to defy certain mathematical realities. If you are collecting tariff money, you are either taxing the importer, which means his profit margins are lower, which means he's going to eventually lay off some people, or his reported corporate earnings are going to be lower, which affects the stock market prices because stocks trade on PE multiples, or he's going to pass that on to people who buy stuff. That's a tax on the consumer, which they will feel. And it's a regressive tax, which hurts people with limited incomes way more than it hurts the multimillionaires that he just gave a real tax cut to. So he's shifting tax burden. So whenever I hear people who aren't rich saying, "Oh, but we're collecting so much our tariff money," yeah, he just gave really rich people a tax cut through income taxes, and he just gave you a tax hike through tariffs once the stuff gets passed on.
Yeah.
And you're too unknowledgeable to even freaking know he just did it to you.
Those are true, but also at the same time, typically under Trump with his tax plan, the real wages do increase, not to the tune of, record-breaking whatever, but they do rise. And you also have that component there of the one big beautiful bill where that has tax revisions that are very limited to I think it's only 2020 the rest of this year and only 2026 to like where if you have a big capex expenditure, you'll get a big tax break from the government for coming in and doing these things. Like, so how much is that going to motivate real business to actually, reshore or whatever we want to call it, whether it's some kind of manufacturing or whatever. If it's going to be a boom, I don't know. I would hesitate to go out that far and say that all the legislation and thus far is going to result in that. But you certainly will see, I hope, more of that being talked about and shown in the data. I don't see it in the data yet, but it's still early days. But and again, I defer to Aaron because and you, Chris, as well, for your real world experience in the economy and understanding these things, big picture side. But there's a lot of variables, and I don't know. But
I know very few well-educated people who actually studied economics in school who think tariffs are a good idea.
well, I
Okay.
just mean from like not necessarily from the egghead perspective, but from the businessman's perspective, which is like what Trump likes to tap on more often than not.
Let me just make one last comment. Trump's not a real businessman. Real estate is not real business the way
Sure.
there are no supply chains of any complexity in real estate.
I just mean from the standpoint of like what's a friend of the show, Shemisal, when he had his podcast, he was talking about how Trump likes to err on the side of being, the businessman perspective versus the egghead economist.
Well, that's what he says, but that's not the effect of what he's doing. That's
I'm just
another,
saying, like, yeah,
right?
that's how he likes to frame himself up and things up. Right.
Exactly. No, the real businessman is sitting somewhere saying, "You just made me exhaust my cash flow because I had to pre-order all this stuff because I don't know what it's going to cost me in 3 months."
Right. The
That,
uncertainty is the problem.
yeah.
But let me ask you guys this before we let Alan come in. Um, will we? So Trump since 2016, we've been getting screwed. We've been getting screwed, right, on our trade deals. So are we to say we weren't getting screwed, and everything was fine with that imbalance of us getting uh, overly charged from our foreign and not being able to have access to their markets and stuff like that?
I will say this, Professor Kenny. If there were imbalances in the relative receptivity of goods into different countries, you focus on those. You don't come up with a bunch of capricious, unwell analyzed actions that it's like you're dropping an anvil on your car to get a spot off that you could have taken a rag and gotten off if you had figured out what solvent to use.
Mm-hmm.
So, the bottom line with Trump is this, from my perspective. He knows that there's a set of people who like to have an enemy to go after. There's enemies in the culture wars, and now there's enemies in countries. And so he created an enemy set to go after. But the way he's doing it just makes no economic or businessman sense.
Yeah, I would just fall back on, Trump is very situational, and he A/B tests things all the time, and I obviously I voted for him, and I would say hold the line, but I would hope that in any given economic situation, or he is reconfiguring the economic whatever we
The
want to
world
call it.
economy, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean
Yep.
that is on now whether it is capricious and there actually is a strategy. I still think that in each situation, I would hope that he would find the leverage for America to like where we would pull the benefit out of that, regardless of the optics and the chaos around it. I would
Hey,
hope.
ML, is there a 35% tariff on Canada other than the reason that the Canadian guy basically told him to go F himself when they met?
Oh well,
And is there a 50% tariff on Brazil, other than the fact that his butt buddy Bolsonaro, who's the Trump of Brazil, is being rightfully prosecuted?
yeah. Well, I would have to check the actual stats, but I would assume that he said that, and Carney also pulled a dirty trick on him, like with the digital, the
Right.
DPS
And
tax
we have a trade
and the Palestinian thing.
surplus. We have a trade surplus with Brazil.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
like
I'm
I
gonna
said,
let's bring Alan in. Alan, what's on your mind?
Uh, just a couple things. The ridiculous tariffs that Trump rolled out on Liberation Day, in my opinion, was a opening salvo of a negotiation, and we're seeing some of the fruits of that negotiation with the deals with EU and Britain, Japan, Korea. We're gonna start seeing the fruits of that negotiation. Like he wasn't gonna charge 60%. He was being over the top. And I think a 3% basis rate cut for the Fed, if that was to happen today, that would be an awful thing to just cut it. Again, it's an opening salvo. He's making a bombastic, crazy claim to try to move the hand of Jerome Powell to make even the slightest rate cut. Um, so those are my observations of Trump's some would label as crazy actions, and they are a bit over the top. They are over the top, to be 100% honest. But if we're getting better trade deals and reshuffling the deck of trade with people who have been taking advantage of the US and access to our markets and doing that, I'm all for it. He's trying to reshuffle world trade in his vision of how it should be. And I I have faith it's going to work out. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to say I was wrong. So those are that's what I'm seeing. And buy the dip on Bitcoin and the market, and that's it.
Hey, Alan, the average tariff that we were charging other people coming into the country was, when you strip through all the BS, 2 to 3%. When we take it to 15 to 18 on average, uh, that's not going to result in inflation going away. That's a fact. Now, so? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, you're good, Chris. You're
No,
good.
no, I muted myself by accident.
Okay, and so I know that's going to happen. So what I want to know from you, Alan, what is it that you know is going to happen in terms of us selling more uh, Ford 150s in Europe?
That's not the ultimate goal. It's to reshuffle the deck, and inflation is always
Well,
going to
wait a
happen.
minute. What does reshuffling the deck
Well,
mean if it
it's
doesn't
it's
sell more
to
stuff to them?
it's to work out better trade deals and make things more fair. They had VAT taxes in Europe that stopped certain things. Like most Europeans don't want to buy an F-150, right? But the way they limited other things, and if we get a better deal, and when I talk about it with inflation, you brought up inflation as well. I wanted to say something about is if we consistently keep energy prices at a certain point where it's just stable, it stops inflation from spiking to ridiculous things. Because if businesses know they have a consistent fuel supply, or one of the things we got charged in the restaurant industry when I was managing restaurants, we got fuel surcharges added to our thing when the gas prices were going crazy. We were getting these like $150, $300 fuel surcharges added by the people delivering our goods. Um, and I think what Trump's trying to do is stabilize energy, keep energy prices cheap and low, and stop inflation from growing at a higher rate. Because you're never going to lower prices if you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. So, I mean, you're asking me what I'm big. I talk to Shamsul a lot on the morning show, and
That's a debatable use of time, in my opinion. But go ahead.
uh,
Shamsil's all right.
Shamsul knows a lot about business, and I just feel like if we can keep energy prices consistent, and we can reshuffle the trade deck and get better trade deals, bring more investment into the US. And the thing is we're not gonna make textiles here. We're not gonna make shirts and things that we can make cheaper. We need to make chips, we need to make pharmaceuticals, we need to make ships, we need to make airplanes. Aaron talked about desalination plants. Like I want to get that going in Florida, because like water is the next commodity. Anyways, I'm rambling. So,
No, 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 you're not rambling. That was good. That's all good. That's all
but
good. And that's spirited debate, which was very good. Okay, so we are at 10:49, so I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna bring up, I'll mention the picnic. Actually, I'm gonna unmute Haley so she can talk about the picnic again. I hope people in the New York tri-state area come to our picnic next Saturday at noon at Sheep Meadows in Central Park. Go ahead, Haley. Take it away.
Well, you said it all. It's next Saturday. It's around 12 o'clock. We'll post the link in the chat. We really hope everybody can come, and please, if you're coming, we really want to push bring BYOB, as we millennials say. just bring your own shit type thing. So just bring something, and approximately around 20 people, and for right now. And yeah, so we're really, really excited. Can't wait to see everybody next weekend.
Yeah, awesome. So, Chris, I want to thank you for co-hosting. You did a great job, brother. You added a lot to the show today, and
Thanks.
it's making me think that maybe we need Mike, you, and Andres, and maybe I'll just sit on the side. But anyway, but seriously, no, that was very good, and thanks, Steve, for your questions, and Aaron, of course, enlightening us on many topics. That you're like the ace in the hole, Aaron. And so we'll be back again next Sunday at 9:30, as always, same time, same bat channel. And hopefully, we'll have we're going to talk about the big beautiful two-way fan picnic and see how that went. And we hope to see as many people as we can. And on that note, let's make America great all the time. How about that? Instead of the other guy's slogan. But no, good spirited debate. We'll see how all of this plays out down the road, and we'll revisit this next Sunday. So thanks to everyone. Now I'm going to keep this open. I'm going to get off. I'm going to keep Mike a host. I'm going to make Haley a host. I'll keep Chris as a host. But I'm going to get off. I'm going to shut the live feed and whatever because I have my mom to deal with. And so you guys, if you're going to keep chatting, enjoy yourselves, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, Professor. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Joe, guys.
I
You
can
guys
hang
can
up.
keep you guys
I
can
can-
keep going because I'll stop the live feed. It's okay. You guys can keep going.
Yeah, and the unmute is off, so people, if you unmute yourself, you'll be able to mute yourself
It's
and unmute
Sunday.
yourself.
It's gorgeous.
Okay.
How's everybody's weather?
Good. It's friggin'
So
nice.
nice. So
It's
nice
hot.
right now.
So nice. It's like the perfect freaking weather. I can't believe it. August and it's like 70 degrees.